Greetings everyone, and welcome to my channel once again. Today I'm going to be discussing a very controversial subject, BLM. I had decided earlier that I'm not going to discuss social and political issues, but since Kanye West did what he did this week with that White Lives Matter shirt, I thought let me just go into this and let's see how it goes. So here's my stance. Oh boy, Lord help me. So, BLM. I understand that people have different views on this matter, which is fine, since the US is a free country and all. And there will be opportunity later for people who disagree with my view to raise their issues, their questions, queries, objections, dissenting voices. And I'll record a second video to answer some of those questions, comments, queries. But for now, I'm just going to start here by saying, as you can see, I'm a black man. And I just wanted you to know that I do not support BLM, not even close. My views on BLM have evolved over the time, but currently I do not support BLM at all. And here I'm just going to look at the key theses of the BLM movement and try to answer it in the way that I understand it, which will explain why, as a black man, as a black African who speaks only for himself, why I don't support it. So here's the key principle that is presented by BLM. They claim something along those lines, or variations along these lines, that police hate black people in the US, or that police are killing black suspects because of racism, or because of systematic racism, or white supremacy, or a cocktail mix of some of those things. They argue that police are targeting black people by killing them disproportionately because of racism, white supremacy, and all those other colorful terms that they use. And then the question then would be, what would be the support for this claim? Or support for any variation of these claims? And often the support is evidence that is anecdotal, and sometimes the evidence that they rely upon does not even support the claim at all. Like, case in point, the Breonna Taylor incident, Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin. I'm just using these three examples that I've looked into properly. And the evidence of these cases does not support their claim. But but this has not stopped them from using these cases as evidences of police discrimination. That's a, yeah, but we'll talk about those cases another day. I just want to look at some facts and figures for you. The figures that and the stats that I'm using are from 2019, and there's a reason why they are from 2019. Oh, you know, obviously that police stats or any other government stats are normally delayed by a year, so we don't have 2021 stats yet. But what we would have is 2020 stats. But the thing is, with 2020 stats is that you can't use 2020 stats because they are not normal. And the reason why they are not normal is because of that sum of violence and destruction that happened in 2020, which does not give us a proper normal picture of what's going on in the US. Mind you that the distorted stats of 2020 don't necessarily support the BLM case, because there were more black people were killed in 2020 because of BLM riots, and police officers were killed also because of BLM riots, up to 10 times more than any black person that was killed by unarmed. So it's not that I'm not using the stats of 2020 because they don't support my narrative. No, I'm just not using them because they are just not reliable. If anyone has any background in statistics, you cannot use statistics that are not reliable, regardless of which direction they go. Because if I use 2020 stats to show that black people are killing police, those numbers will be higher than normal, but they won't be reliable. But that's, yeah. Anyways, 2019 stats. Here are the facts. Police killed the number of 55% of all police killings, that will include lawful and unlawful killings, in 2019 were of whites, and 27% were of blacks, followed by Latinas around 20%. So, total number of persons killed by the police in 2019, I repeat, 55% white, 27% black, 20% Latina. And then the rest of the population fits into the remainder small percentage. Secondly, in 2019, 28 unarmed persons were fatally shot here in the US. 19 of these were white, 9 of these were black. So, obviously, one person unjustly killed by the police is one too many. Why? Because the US Constitution is very clear about that no one shall be deprived of life unless they've been sentenced to death, or unless there's a good reason for it, which is like normally self-defense and all those other things. So one person unjustly killed by police is one too many. But here it is, living in an imperfect world, you have 20 people killed, 19 of them were white, 9 of them were black. Here's a note to that. Unarmed does not mean the killing was not justified. Yeah, I know some of the liberals watching this video are not smart enough to figure that out. The fact that someone is unarmed does not mean that their killing is unjustified. Which is why you can't just take numbers at face value and then run with them devoid of context, devoid of what was actually happening in that particular situation. But in any case, in both sets of these data sets, white people in absolute terms are killed more by police in both the all police killings and the police killings of unarmed persons. And I'm pretty confident that there's a number of black Americans who would think that there are no white people there are no white people who are killed by the police while they are unarmed. The reason why I think there is a number of black people who believe this is because they are constantly being told that people who are killed while unarmed by the police are black people. But the fact doesn't show that. It also even shows that white people who are unarmed are killed by police more at a higher rate than than blacks. Okay, so looking at both these data sets, someone might ask a, a relevant and valid question and say, but look, 13% of the US population is black. Then why are these police killings killing them at a rate that is 27% of total shootings? Oh, I'm glad you asked this question. This is exactly what I want to address here, among others. Because see, folks, when any metric or variable, in this case police shootings, doesn't follow expected proportions based on population size, we ask questions as we should. And we note here that since white people are the majority in the US, we expect them to be the majority of the number of those that are killed by the police in all shooting categories. But what else do we expect? We expect Latinas to be second on this list. Because Latinas are number 2 on the population list in the US, then black people. But the figures don't show this. What it shows white people at the top as they should, and then it shows black people as number 2. The question is why? And folks, I'll tell you one thing. If you are looking for simplistic answers to complex questions, then you're watching the wrong channel, my friend. Here, we are not going to give you simplistic answers. We're not going to give you ignorant, simplistic one-liners that just seem to inflame passions but are not backed by anything credible. Here, we're going to try to look at a body of evidence on its whole and evaluate it, and look at all the evidence, exculpatory evidence, everything else, to see what really is going on here. But generally here at this stage, the BLM folks and their partners in the media and their useful morons in Hollywood and useful imbeciles like athletes, jump to say, yeah, you see, so many blacks have been killed in relative terms. This is a sure sign of racism. But then if that were the case, then why are Latinas so low? Number one. You know how we keep getting told that, oh, America hates Latinas. This is why those evil Nazi Republicans want strong borders, because they hate Latinas. So if Republicans had, if Americans hate Latinas so much, why are Latinas so low on the list? Number one. And number two, why are Native Americans, which it can be argued that they're the most marginalized group in the US, why they're not even showing at all in this police shootings figures? And why are Asians also virtually statistically negligible in these figures? If America, which we are told, has this huge problem of systematic racism, of hating the other and those who look different from the Anglo-Saxon, they are killing black people because they hate them, but they are not killing Indians, which you constantly tell us that America hates Indians. And they are not killing Asians, which you also constantly tell us that, oh, America has a crisis of Asian hate crime. Okay, folks. I mean, if that's what you want to believe, be my guest. And for me, the basic principle here would be to say that if the proportion of blacks that is being killed is questioned, as it should, in terms of question why, the Latina number also must be questioned. But the Latina number is not being questioned. And if the blacks number question is being questioned, the Indian number must also be questioned, but it's not being questioned. So what I find is that the left suffers from a serious case of cognitive dissonance. And there will be, as I already said, they'll be shouting on top of their lungs saying that there is an existential crisis of Asian hate crimes in the US. Stop killing Asians. Americans hate Asians. But also at the same time, Asians are not even statistically significant in police shootings. Houseway. They argue, here's the thing, they argue that Americans hate black people. They also argue at fever pitch level that Americans hate Asians. But they're uninterested in the fact that Asians are not are nowhere at the level that they should be in terms of shooting stats with regards to their population size. And also they reason that police are killing blacks because America is racist to blacks, and therefore police take this racism that they carry to policing. But then, okay, but then they also argue that since America is anti-Asian, don't you think that also police will take this anti-Asian hate into policing? No? You're not asking this question at all? You're not even contemplating it? But I'm supposed to put up a BLM sign on my yard. Give me a fucking break. I've already said that when a metric or a variable does not follow expected figures based on population size, we need to ask questions. And these questions need to be consistent. So I'm going to now just move on to the next set of figures that's going to help us to actually paint a more complete picture of what's going on. That, okay, we're saying that, okay, police kill more white people in all numbers, and police kill more white people in terms of unarmed suspects. But we know that the blacks that are being killed in both of those data sets are higher than we would expect based on the population data of black people in the US. But what else we know that is true? We know that 50% of all murders or homicides in the United States are committed by black people. And that 65% of all violent break-ins are committed by black people. Yet, black people are 13% of the total US population. They are 13% of the population. They commit 50% of the murders, 65% of all violent crimes. Violent house break-ins. And the question also here is why? Because if you're going to ask me the question of why they are overrepresented in the shootings data set, why also don't you ask the same question that why are they committing 50% of the murders? Okay, so if I were to conclude, as the left is leading us to conclude, that, okay, listen, black people are relatively killed more because of racism, let me just follow this reasoning. So, are black people also committing 50% of murders because they have a higher propensity to violence than the rest of America? Are black people committing 50% of the murders because they hate their fellow Americans? Are black people just such hate-filled people that at a rate of 13% they commit 50% of the murders or 65%? You see, folks, once you start making stupid arguments, why stop now? Just follow this logic to its natural conclusion. Of course, the idea that blacks have a natural propensity to violence is absurd. It's also offensive. But why would you not follow it in that similar reflexive way of making reflexive reasoning while you've been doing the same thing when you're looking at numbers of police shootings? Listen, folks. I promise you that there's some people here who can't be convinced by anything. They can't be convinced by data sets. They can't be convinced by facts and figures. They can't be convinced by reality. They are committed to a narrative. They are 100% committed. They can't be moved. These people can't be helped. So, which is also one reason for me why it's important for me to put up a video like this, so that each time I hear a stupid argument from one of these leftist talking heads, you can show me, okay, these are the facts as they are. Engage them. 100% of the time, they refuse to engage the facts. Absolutely refuse to engage them. So, anyways, another thing, folks, is that what would really bake your noodles later is that if 50% of the murders in a country are committed by this 13% of the population, this is very important now. Stay with me. One, this means that this minority, whatever this minority might be, would have a larger contact with police in absolute terms. Yes, no? Think about it. Won't they be more likely to have police arrests or police engaging with them because of the rate at which their group commits the crimes? Of course they will. So if police engagement with any community in its totality, some of it is good engagement, some of it is lawful, some of it is unlawful, won't any of the unlawful engagement with the police also be higher for a population group that commits 50% of the murders? Okay, follow me. Follow this line of reasoning for a second. Assume for a second that 50% of the murders in the US were committed by women. Doesn't it follow that the majority of arrests, some of which will result in no conviction and some of which will be unlawful arrest, would be of women? Duh. Okay, so if we assume that some of the police outcomes will be bad, whether lawfully or unlawfully, won't those majority of bad outcomes be of women, regardless of how small or big the population is in the US? Okay. Then a big proportion of these are just simply probability. You don't even have to have done a stats 1 course at university to understand this. You just need to have a functioning brain to understand it. And this obviously does not discount in any way wrongdoing motivated by hate in the hands of police officers. It doesn't discount any other unlawful actions by police. But it just shows that if you're looking at these three sets of data points, you already have some form of justification, not fully, but some form of justification of why these numbers would be the way that they are. But what else do we know? What else do we know? In the US, if you look at black violence in the US towards white people and white violence towards black people, folks, these numbers are mind-blowing. The numbers show that white persons are up to 8 times more likely to be victims of violence in the hands of black people compared to black people being victims of violence in the hands of white people. Let me say that again. White folks in the US are 8 times more likely to be victims of violence in the hands of black people compared to black people being victims of violence in the hands of white people. But apparently it is blacks who are being targeted. My question is, so is it okay for us to assume the reason why blacks are number 2 on the fatalities list while they are not number 2 on the population list is because of racism, because they are being targeted. But to assume that blacks are just natural criminals when they commit 50% of their murders, it's not okay. Or to assume that blacks are just hooligans because they're 8 times more likely to commit violence against white people is also not okay. How does this shit work? Whites in the US are more likely to be killed by blacks than the other way around. In fact, the numbers show that each and every racial group in the United States of this America is more likely to be a victim of murder in the hands of a black person than any, and the other way around. Let me say that again. Each and every racial group in the US is more likely to be a murder victim in the hands of a black person than it is likely the other way around. Do you want to talk about those figures? Does this presuppose that blacks hate their fellow Americans? Gosh. And every other group is also more likely to be murdered by a black person. I can tell you what, there are very few black Americans who know someone who was killed by police unlawfully. But every family, every white family, every Indian, Asian family in the US knows someone who was killed by a black person. That's a fact. So, oh, shit, this has gone very long. So, let me try to wrap this up now. Racism does play a role in some of the fatalities, obviously. But the question here was how pervasive this is. And the senseless murder, for instance, of George Floyd was one. And those people are being prosecuted under hate crimes. But hate crimes in the US are generally are low. But there is a big rise in hate crime hoaxes over the past few years, while the actual hate crimes are actually declining. And doubtless the federal government and local governments, including state governments, need to understand better the circumstances around each and every shooting done by the police. Every shooting done by police. Whether it results in an injury or whether it results in a death. So that you can properly understand what's going on. So that you can actually stop having these liberal talking heads speaking all of this BS that is demonstrably BS, actually, and using clear examples of unlawful conduct like George Floyd to then extrapolate that, yeah, there's a crisis. We're out here. We can't walk the streets as black people. Nigga, please, give me a fucking break. Clear racist incidents must not be used without just cause as clear evidence that there is actual racial targeting. There has to be enough body of evidence that supports it. But from where I'm standing and from where a lot of Americans of goodwill are standing, there is no clear evidence that shows that there is actually such targeting. Anyways, I haven't really completed everything that I wanted to complete, but I'm just gonna leave it here for now. And yeah, so with regards to people who watch this video, have disagreements, disagree in full, disagree in part, leave a comment below and tell me, and then please leave a timestamp so that I can see which point you disagree with. People who have queries, people who want clarity with regards to a certain point I made, leave comments. Also leave a timestamp so that I can see which point you're really talking about. Just leave your thoughts, comments, queries, objections, dissenting voices below, and I'm gonna upload a follow-up video that's gonna answer some questions and queries that I think need to be answered. Obviously, I was not able to complete everything that I prepared to say here because of the time constraints. Or eventually, this video is going to be an hour long, and I don't want an hour long video. Yeah, so I look forward to hear your thoughts, and cool. See you later.